Well, Cloud Notes, what it is a software that deals with welding bureaucracy. And just to make a quick introduction on what welding bureaucracy is, what essentially welding is considered a special process by international committees in quality standards. So this means that companies need to be qualified in order to perform welding in critical structures. So these qualifications, they give you a range of materials, but they are very restrictive. And the best way that I can show this is if I present an example. So let's say that your company will be welding this pipe. So it is 20 millimeters thickness, 300 millimeter diameter, and it's a stainless steel. This is just an example. So what happens is you will send this, first of all, you will weld this and you'll have an inspector witnessing it. And once he approves, this piece will be sent to numerous testing bodies. So it will be cut up in pieces and undergo a series of tests, which will define whether you will be qualified or not. And if all these tests are positive, if they pass, then you'll get a certificate that tells you that you will be qualified from a certain range. So these values are just indicative. They are not what's written in the standards. This is just to make the explanation a little bit simpler. So in the case of a 20 millimeter pipe, you'd be qualified from 10 to 40, and in diameter, you'll be qualified from 150 to 600, and you'd be able to weld any pipe or plate or of any stainless steel. Which means if you need to weld carbon steel, that would not, this certificate would not allow you to do that. You'd need to qualify a separate one. So the problem with this is that because of this, you will have all your qualifications. They will start piling up because you need this for both welders and your company. So you need the PQRs and the welder qualifications. The welding engineer or welding coordinator's job becomes harder and harder to do. And if you have any mistakes in your documentation, these errors could prove expensive or catastrophic in the long run. So that's the reason why Weld Cloud Notes was created. It is a software that allows for PQR and welder qualification management, writing WPSs, the full weld traceability, and one main pillar that is not as common, which is to search and find qualified documents, which I will explain a little bit later what it means. So Notes is a unified system where every relevant person can have access to everything. So a QA/QC manager can monitor production and just approve documents, whereas a welding engineer will actually write the WPSs and maintain the welder continuity, and the weld inspector could introduce data from the field. This could be done via a smartphone or tablet in order to maintain the full weld traceability. This inspector can also upload his reports directly into the software so that the welding engineer, who may be in an office in another country even, he will see immediately all the information that the inspectors from the field add to the system. So with this, we crafted a bunch of features that are relevant to this. So one of which is what we call the Q Matrix. It's a search engine which compares all the project requirements with your company's PQRs, WPSs, and welder qualifications, which gives you the information that you're qualified. And if you are not qualified for something, it tells you what you are not qualified for, and then you can perform the qualification by doing the test that I just mentioned before. You can also, with this, ensure that you're qualified from the get-go, which means that you will not run into the problem of finding you're not qualified in the middle of a project, which could have a lot of complications. But this feature will allow you to do this initial setup, which you can do when you have a project bids or when you need to get started and writing the WPSs for the projects. naturally, we have a welding procedure generator. You can write WPSs based on PQRs, and with this, you have code checking from the PQR. So if you're trying to do something non-compliant, the software will warn you that you're doing something non-compliant. And besides that, you are also able to design your weld sketches, which is a task that frequently takes a bit of time. It's a bit of a pain, but we have a very simple system to do so. Whether you work with third-party agencies or you qualify in your own company, you can use Notes for PQR and welder qualifications. So we have all this data in, and you will be able to introduce that, and it will be fully searchable. But if you do qualify your own, we have some PDF forms that we generate inside the software that you can use for your company. So whether you work with third-party agencies and they send you their PDFs, or you create your own and you could generate your own PDFs, or you do a mix of both, you can do that with Notes. And once you have the PQRs in, writing WPSs is pretty much instant. Now, welder management is another topic that is quite relevant, especially here for us in Europe, where every welder that is qualified under ISO will have 2 sets of periods that need to be renewed. So there's one that's 6 months that you need to renew, and usually every 2 or 3 years you would need to renew them again. So we send notifications for all of these whenever it is whenever they are occurring. So once you have a welder qualification that's about to expire, you will receive some email notifications and some notifications inside of the software itself. And if you want to renew them with NDT reports, you can attach them in the welder as well, in the welder qualification. And yeah, so weld traceability, we have a functionality that allows you to introduce all the details of each individual weld in your project, and you'll be able to upload all the documents, all the NDTs, all the WPSs, and as the information gets fed in by your team, you will be able to monitor it from this dashboard that is in here. You can see it in the screenshot. And one of the main aspects of this is that you need to generate a lot of documentation with all the information from the welds. And with Notes, you just click on a button, it starts generating it in the background, and it takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes, maybe even less, depending on the size of the project. And you'll have all the documentation in one place. And last but not least, Notes is quite mobile friendly. So if you have staff working on the field next to the welders, you will be able to use WeldCloud Notes and send this information to the software that can be accessible from anyone in your staff. So you'll be able to reduce the time moving from offices to the workshops, and making sure that everything is in a centralized location. And without further ado, I will move into the software itself. So actually, I will log into a different account. So this software, you essentially go into this page right here, where you will log into that. You will log into your account and you'll have access to all the features immediately. So from here, I will start showcasing what I call the Q matrix. And let's say you have an example of a project. So let's say it's going to be for ISO 15614, and you have these 10 different pipes that you need to weld. So I want to find all the PQRs that I have qualified for this project. And in this scenario, I've just introduced ISO 15614, and base metal is going to be stainless steel. You could filter for processes, you could filter for welding positions, welding details, filler metals, and so on. But what I want to do now is I click preview, And if I click preview, it tells me everything that I have qualified. And from what I can see is that in this company, I don't have a lot of things qualified for this project. So you can see that for the pipes above 6 inches, I have this PQR with TIG and submerged arc welding. And for this plate, I have this PQR with full TIG. Whereas for these other pipes, I would have to qualify something new, which means I know this from the get-go. So this also allows you to avoid spending money on qualifying things that you already have. So for example, you would not qualify anything for 6 inches or above. This is frequent in a lot of companies where they qualify things that they may not have needed because they just don't have the capability of finding these documents. And with notes, we do this with both the PQRs, the welders, and the WPSs. Here's an example where I'm showing, in this case, ASME Section 9, which is another standard of welders. What welders do we have qualified for this project? So in this case, I don't have any specific welding. Maybe if I start removing some details, I will start getting some. But in any case, Weld Cloud Notes will do this search for you. So this is just the beginning of a project. And by the way, this Teams live event does have some Q&A capabilities. So if you have any questions about the software, feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll be able to answer it right after I finish. This is just the beginning of the project. What I want to do now is I will want to create some WPSs. So if I open up this PQR, I can overview it. So it's TP304, it's stainless steel, TIG, and submerged arc welding. And you can see more or less the details, what are the passes, but now I want to create a WPS. So if I click WPS, create WPS 2011-109-001, and it's going to be a butt weld on pipe. So what this does is it copies all the information from the PQR into the WPS. And what happens here is you can now customize it. But if you try to customize something over the limits of the PQR, then Weld Cloud Notes will warn you that you're doing something that you are not capable of. So the PQR does not allow this. You'll be warned in here and also when you try to save the document. So let me put that back in. And another thing that you can customize here is the weld sketches. So every detail here can be customized, but this one is quite relevant that if you don't want this configuration of passes, you can just change it and let's say make it a little bit different, and you can manipulate how these passes are done. You can even enlarge it a little bit, but it is fairly simple. So this allows you to modify existing weld sketches for specific WPSs, or you can create them from scratch if you'd like. You can just manipulate the plates and the arrows and the weld passes in order to have the drawing that you really want. So I will just generate this example. It should be here downloading. We can generate it in both PDF and Excel. And I think there is a couple of issues with my browser. The software is already downloaded, but okay, I'll open up an existing one that I have before. So what it does is it generates the document and puts it into a single PDF page or Excel page, if you would like that. And with this, you'll have all the details for the WPS in that you can send to your welders later on. So with this, you will have all the essential variables are here, all the details for the processes, for the filler metals and all that will be in here. So this is quite relevant. Let me just do this. This is quite relevant because you can write these WPSs quite fast, and you will be able to maintain all your documentation this way. But that is one of the functionalities of Weld Cloud Notes. And I will now move on into another one that is quite relevant, which is the maintenance of welder qualifications. So welder certificates, you'll have a list of all of them. And let's say you have all the welder qualifications in here. You'll be able to search them just like I showed on the QMatrix section. And you can export an Excel certificate list if you need to send them to a supplier or maybe a customer with the details of your capabilities. But one of the main things is what I showed before about the internal revalidation. Oh, it downloaded now. All right. This is just the example in PDF that I showed earlier, but it's similar. So let's move on into the welder certificates. So when you go into these menus, and these also go to your email, you'll get notified that your welder qualifications are about to expire. In this case, it's 9 days until the deadline, 16 days, and so on. And you can click the button to revalidate. If you have NDT reports, you can attach them as well, but these are optional. And the idea here is that you maintain this, and it will create a full-on continuity log in this section here called the revalidation history. So in this case, it will keep track of all the previous periods that there were renewals on, and it will allow you to show this to an auditor or anyone really, and they will be happy that you're keeping full track of all the welder qualifications and making sure that they are still qualified. So with this, you will get the full continuity log for the internal revalidations, or if you're doing with ISO 9606 certificates, you'll also have the external revalidation where you need to send it to the company that renewed the certificate. So those would be how you deal with welder certificates. So there's PQRs, certificates, WPSs. So what I would like to do now is to show you a little bit about what we do with the projects. So with the projects, what you can do is you specify the details of the project, like the customer, the standards, and all that, and you can divide this project into components. So in these components, you will have a lot of welds that have so each component has a significant number of welds. You can monitor them from this component dashboard, let's call it, and each weld also carries a lot of information. So like the components, the welds have their own progress bar, and you will have the type of weld that you introduce here, the base material used, the base material certificate that was used, including the heat number, the WPS, the filler metal, and essentially all the tests, all the persons involved, and all the dates at which everything was done. So currently, this is you do this through the interface, or you can connect to the software via an API. And in the terms of data entry, we have multiple functions to help. So you can duplicate welds on a 50 by 50 basis, and you can duplicate components on a 1 by 1 basis, but it doesn't matter how many welds are in it. But the idea is that as you plan the project and introduce data inside here, you will have a dashboard that has all the details, like welds completed, like the repair rate, the components, the welds waiting, and all the details for which stage each weld is in. So with this, you'll be able to even monitor some bottlenecks. If one of these stages is getting too much larger, maybe you need to hire more persons in the next stage to move welds into production. And in the end, you'll have a some graphs that show you how many welds have been planned, fitted, welded, tested, processed, and shipped. So these are the stages of the welds. And when you're done with the project, you can generate it into a single PDF document. So it will have all the components and welds into this section here, and then a list of welds with all the details like the materials, the grades, and all that. So it puts all of them in here. So I'll just scroll down a little bit now, and you'll put all the documents related to this project in here. So the WPSs are here. The PQRs, actually first it's the welders with their welder qualifications in here that you attach. If I scroll down a little bit more, all the details for inspection, including the number of tests, the percentage of tests, and all the reports related to these tests. So you'll have full-on traceability. And then the actual NDT reports that you attach here. We currently do not have we currently have this under PDF forms, but soon we will have a full-on generation system of NDT reports. So you'll be able to generate these inside the software. But in any case, you can attach them here and use them as traceability. Then you'll have all the PQRs that are linked directly to the WPSs. And if I scroll down, then you'll have the drawings that you attach here and the isometrics as well. They will be here. And base material certificates, they will be attached here based on what's on the welds. You'll have then filler metal certificates in here. And then you'll have any other documents. I've attached an invoice here, but it could be, I don't know, an inspection and test plan, painting and coating reports, anything that is relevant to the project, but not necessarily to the welds themselves. With this, I conclude the presentation of Weld Cloud Note.